actions. But he already knew that, and it was just as Yumina herself wanted, talking to him before. That incident would attract both big and small people. So, Ban stated that he wanted to stabilize his position and asked the professor if she didn't think she would feel safe taking care of them. She secretly smiled, not believing he was so admirable. Responding to the protagonist, she said that if he wanted to feel safe, he should avoid causing accidents. She had already created great expectations. She felt that the things Ban had created would generate something immense. So she remained silent, and the professor in the meeting asked what she was thinking about. About the things that Ban had done and accomplished, she decided that she would support him. So she asked the professor. Filming and publishing a video of the tower was just a personal matter, so it was not their problem to discuss that. She made it clear that she wasn't understanding what he was saying when he wanted to hold her responsible. Professor Alex Cantoni had been the one responsible for pressuring the professor, acting against her students. He started laughing, calling her a beautiful liar, raising his voice, trying to instigate the other professors, asking if he was the only one who felt as if her point sounded like an attempt to defend the student. At that moment, the blue-haired professor told Cantoni to be quiet. She, Talia Liriana from the Artifact Creation Department, asked Yumina to tell her who this student was, stating that he was just a common student. However, another professor couldn't accept it, being from the Aura Combat Studies Department. He stated that there was a limit to selfishness, and that the information about the tower was centered on the academy. At that moment, she confronted the professor, saying that his words were strange. The reason no one had filmed the tower until that moment was because it blocks. Professor Cantoni interrupted Yumina with a smile, hiding his own interests, wanting her to explain the principles of the ability. Yumina remained silent, listening to that question. On the other side of the table, Thalia also spoke up, claiming to have spent 200 years studying these subjects. She knew very well that artifacts created outside the tower didn't work inside it, especially filming equipment. It was common knowledge that no circuit could handle the waves demanded by the tower. The more she researched, the more she became convinced that external machines would never work inside. Hearing all those words, Professor Yumina completed the words, saying that her student had succeeded. This left Talia much more curious, saying that was what she wanted to know, who this boy was. She was annoyed because he came from a dimension that didn't even have mana, and that made it seem like only he was special. The moment she finished saying those words, she realized something. The artifact that had filmed that recording was now with Yumina. The blue-haired professor revealed a scholarly look, determined, putting on her gloves and asking to hand over the artifact. Yumina quickly hugged the little robot, refusing to hand it over. She said she had been asked to bring the artifact to the meeting, but that was a feat accomplished by her student, and she couldn't let anyone do that. Professors one after another went against her. Suddenly, someone raised their hand, asking everyone to stop. That was the professor in the corner of the table next to her. That professor was the Academy's vice president and head of the Constellations Department. Putting his finger to his mouth with a smile, he asked everyone to be quiet so that the heat of the discussion could pass, and everyone agreed. However, after a while, he himself broke the silence by calling Talia suddenly. The professor was extremely shy upon hearing the vice director praise, thanking her efforts for putting 200 years into the research, and recognizing that she was a person apt to judge. It seemed that the artifact made by the student was special, the professor stammered. After hearing the professor's confirmation, the vice director said that this should be a difficult fact for the professors to accept. When the professors questioned what he was saying, he made a point of explaining, summarizing the student in question had been recognized by the tower. After that revelation, the professors were stunned to hear such a statement, because the student had entered the tower for only one day. A professor tried to fight with him, saying that the statements were reckless, even though he was the vice director. But he didn't care about the uproar, shrugging his shoulders. He said they could believe it or not. He also said that there was one more reason for him to be special, so he asked the student's professor to explain, asking if she wouldn't like to reveal something more in the videos so that the professors could understand. The situation got worse, as they were furious to hear that the professor was hiding something. The vice director then said that he would tell them everything. He said that he and his colleagues were the only ones to be chosen by the constellation. The professors noticed the anger Talia was feeling. She couldn't believe someone had climbed the tower for the first time. It was at that moment that Yumina told the vice president that she would make contact with the constellations, a student achievement too. Answering the professor's request, he asked her to respond truthfully to the question he would ask as vice president. Had her 4 students signed contracts with the constellations? She thought for a moment about why he was going so far. Still, she told the truth. None of them had signed the contract, which generated great curiosity in the vice director. Making a decision, Zenon informed everyone present that he would also consider Ban Yuan and all the other students in Class 11 as his students. Upon hearing this, the professors quickly asked him to reconsider. They reminded him that he himself had said that none of the students had made a contract with the Constellations. The vice director, seeing that they didn't understand, made a point of explaining. For him, it didn't matter if the contract had been signed or not. The important thing was that they had been chosen by the Constellations, which already proved they were exceptional, leaving Yumina surprised. After stating that other constellations also wanted them, he began to pressure the other professors. With that, no professor could refute Zenon's words, not even Alex Cantone. So Zenon continued by saying that he was the professor who guided the students chosen by the constellations, and if Ban Yuan were chosen, he would also be his student. In the end, he faced all the professors with his golden eyes. Now that all the professors had accepted, the vice director followed his agenda and presented the new topic. The beautiful Yumina was lost in her thoughts, head down, seeming to understand that that meeting wasn't to decide how to treat Ban. The vice president's words conveyed the president's intentions, and he continued talking about the students. Everything became more evident the more he spoke, addressing topics that confirmed his message. He was transmitting the president's warning, stating that the professors could make requests to understand the students' abilities. After hearing the vice director say that Ban was untouchable, the professors remained silent until the end of the meeting. After stating that he hoped they had understood and wishing them a good weekend, the vice director disappeared. Yumina sighed in relief, never imagining that her student would receive so many favors from the director. In that small moment of relief, one of the professors approached her, Alex Cantone. Inviting her to have some drinks at a bar, he said he wanted to toast to the student's success. With that man's invitation, Yumina turned green with disgust, but didn't respond, just teleported to another place. The professors, realizing the reaction, quickly tried to console Cantone. The next day, several people surrounded the protagonist in the cafeteria. Many people wanted to introduce themselves. Everyone wanted to be Ban's friend, even offering him an invitation to the student council. The protagonist was scared by so many people and so many requests for dates. On the other hand, Doko met with the other two colleagues and they wondered what was happening with all that commotion. Light explained the situation and asked if Doko remembered the channel. He revealed that the channel had gone viral. By now, it was hard to find anyone at the academy who hadn't seen their videos yet. Hearing the explanation and looking around, seeing several people watching the video created by Ban, Doko thought Ban's ideas and abilities were truly excellent. However, Rachel, observing the scene, thought about Doko's reaction and what was happening. At that moment, the protagonist placed his tray on the table, asking what was going on that morning. Tired, he couldn't help but put his head on the table due to everything that was happening. The protagonist also wanted to provoke slight, saying that he had several fans and should be nicer to them. They were surprised by a loud voice that caught Ban's attention. Someone was saying that it was a joke to make a fuss with manipulated images. Some boys were bad-mouthing the protagonist's group. They looked in Ban's direction, saying that he should wait because the next day all his lies would be exposed. The antagonist then remembered that the next day would be the day of the scheduled duel with Erector. It would be the day he would face the stone boy, Erector. After listening to all the insults from those boys, he realized that they were the exact ones who would root against him in the duel. Light also agreed with the protagonist's assumption, while Ruchel offered him support. Wiping her mouth after eating, the white-haired young woman said that he should respond in the best way, especially for those who were watching and supporting the protagonist, and gave him a beautiful smile. The next day, the protagonist went up to the arena, and the assistant professor was there, informing him that the duel would be broadcast live. If the two agreed to the fight being recorded and broadcast live, they should sign the document that appeared in front of them. To their surprise, there were several precautionary terms for the duel. If someone became incapacitated or surrendered, the duel would be ended. Big Guy approached the protagonist, suggesting a negotiation. The protagonist, surprised by the request for negotiation, thought the man was a subscriber to the channel and had watched the videos. However, the stone man asked Ban if he was scared, stating that he could surrender. For that to happen, he would have to crawl between his legs and bark like a dog. Only then would he accept the surrender. Hearing that, the protagonist was surprised. Although the fight was broadcast to the whole school, there were only 2 classes in the arena. The troublemakers who were part of Erector's class were rooting for him, hating Ban. Ortima, who had been beaten by the white-haired young woman last time, looked at the arena with a curious look. However, his gaze was not on the people who were going to fight, but on Doko. She was with the other two, trying to check with Slight what the reactions were like. He informed the girl that the spectators of the broadcast had already reached 10,000 and many were cursing Ban. Dako already expected that. In the best case scenario, the people who liked him, thanks to the videos, would only be a few. So she wanted that now. While many people were watching, Ban would prove if he had the strength to reach the top. The protagonist was thinking about Erector's words about crawling and barking. This made him secretly smile. He never imagined he could actually hear something so pathetic. It was so ridiculous that it seemed to have come out of a third-rate soap opera, so he called Erector's attention, and he gave him a look that seemed